Welcome to Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast, a bi-weekly look at all things related to the growing elite clubs nationally, the ECNL. For more information on the ECNL, visit us at www.theecnl.com. Now, here's your host for Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast, former U.S. Soccer press officer and longtime soccer broadcaster, Dean Linke.
Cobi Jones has long been famous for his dreads and his ability to run the flank for the U.S. national team, appearing in 3 World Cups and an Olympics, and an illustrious career in Major League Soccer, as well as playing over in England and other spots as well. But it wasn't easy for Cobi Jones. He did not take the normal path to the U.S. national team. He was cut more times than he can count, as he will tell us, and yet he made it, and now he is the all-time caps leader. That's international appearances in the history of the U.S. national team. This was a guy who got cut time after time after time, and yet he leads our country in all-time international appearances. Cobi Jones shares that there are different ways to get to where you want to go, and Cobi Jones shares that next with Christian Lavers and myself, Dean Linke, right here on Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast.
As the game continues to evolve in the United States, the ECNL remains the standard of excellence in youth soccer. The Elite Clubs National League has grown to include over 200 clubs and nearly 50,000 players across the country, with a robust competition platform for teams, educational resources for coaches and clubs, and unparalleled identification and development opportunities for players. Alongside its member clubs, collaborating to create a better future, the ECNL continues to raise the game every day. The ECNL is more than a league. Welcome back to Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. Once again, here's Dean.
Welcome back to Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. We are so excited about today's guest. He is one of the most iconic U.S. soccer players of all time. Cobi Jones is the all-time leader in caps for the U.S. national team. He is a U.S. Soccer Hall of Famer, having been a member of the 1992 U.S. Olympic team, the 1994, 98, and 2002 U.S. World Cup teams. As a player, Jones starred for the late, great Ziggy Schmidt at UCLA while doubling down on national team duty. Cobi also played in England and Brazil before enjoying a fabulous 11-year spell with the Los Angeles Galaxy of Major League Soccer. I had the great opportunity of being with Cobi for his 92 Olympics and 94 World Cup runs as press officer of the U.S. national team, and you could not ask for a better person and player to work with. Now, Cobi has established himself as a top-class soccer commentator for multiple networks. He has a voice, and he plans to use it, including being a part of this week's Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast, as he sits down with Christian Lavers and myself, Dean Linke. Cobi, great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. And I love hearing you put all that out there, Dean. I don't think about it too much, but it's great to hear.
Well, I love saying it because you're one of my favorite all-time players, as I think you know. So, well, we already know Christian is waiting, so he's going to drive particularly this first segment and the majority of this show. So, Christian, for this first segment, it's all you. Take it away with the great Cobi Jones.
Hey, I appreciate it, Dean. And Cobi, really appreciate you being on here to talk with us, for us to hear a little bit about your story, your journey, and then your thoughts moving forward, because I think you got a really unique and highly experienced perspective. So maybe I'll just start with, can you give everybody who's listening just a sense of what you're doing now? Because we're going to spend a lot of time on what you did and what you're thinking moving forward. But what's your role in the game now? How are you keeping yourself busy?
Well, I'm doing a lot of things. It's almost like I'm still that utilitarian player that can play in a variety of positions on the field, but now I'm doing it off the field to try to give back to the game. I can't start off. Obviously, I made the run for the U.S. Soccer Vice President, where I thought it, was a position that I could help the game at various levels. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. But I did find out that run opened up a whole lot of other doors, that have really kind of shocked me and is allowing me to give back to the game that I love, in more ways than I ever thought. So some of the things that I'm doing right now specifically, right now I'm the regional broadcaster for the LA Galaxy. I'm doing a lot there. So I broadcast their games. So I'm seeing the LA Galaxy club and organization have its ups and downs and the ins and outs within MLS. I do broadcasting for Fox Sports. So I do a lot of the international games. We talk about World Cup, men's and women's. You talk about MLS, I'm doing a lot in that arena. And I plan to be doing a lot more as we go forward. And then, some of the other things that have kind of come up. I'm working a lot with a variety of different groups. Just announced that I've joined the U.S. Soccer Foundation Board, so I am continuing my efforts within, underserved communities and within that whole region where I've had a relationship with the U.S. Soccer Foundation for about 10 years. And now joining them at a higher position, at a higher level where I hope I can have more of an impact, nationally. So that should be interesting, as I'm sure I'll be learning quite a bit, as I go, in that whole arena. And then there's just some of the personal things, that I'm involved with, where I have become an investor owner in Angel City Football Club, the women's team that's going to be joining, next year. So, which I'm pretty excited about, everyone says to support the women's game. So yes, of course that, but for me, it's important to actually see professional women's soccer within the United States grow and get to another level. I'm excited just to get to a game, and to get it starting. Then, there's some personal things. I'm working with a group where we're trying to open up some soccer facilities, within Los Angeles area and expand to a broader area where we're still at the early stages of getting investors, where we're about 3/4 of what we want to do, where we can have some indoor facilities to really allow kids to play, the game constantly year round under controlled conditions and an exciting, venue, something that I wish I could have had, when I was younger, playing those small, tight games, all the time. So I think that would be something that will help continue to grow the game. So that's a general idea. There's a few other things, but those are the main ones right now.
So you're not kidding about versatility. Your plate is full.
No, not at all. Look, you have to keep yourself occupied. That's it. And one thing that I found, when you are doing broadcasting games, and that's the main thing I do, it's on the weekends, right? So it's usually the weekends, sometimes midweek, but you're working like 2 or 3 days before, then you have the game. And then afterwards you have that downtime where you need to do, something else. I have that personality where I need to be doing something. So I have a lot of other things that are going to help me, fill that task. And, there's other things, I'm also on the U.S. Soccer Diversity Board. I'm part of the Rose Bowl initiative, which is something special. These are all things that are where those things are the ones that you work every once in a while, where it's every few months, that you meet. You are working in between doing stuff, but it's not a massive time drain.
You mentioned that, you had the run for U.S. Soccer Vice President, and then, we had a quick conversation in part of that. But one of the things that in our discussion that's really, really struck me was your passion for the youth game and sort of the understanding of the different types of pathways for players. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said, and I was astounded when I first heard it, that when you grew up, ODP was, the primary selection program for the national teams and for a lot of top players. And I think you said you didn't make beyond a district level in ODP or beyond the state level. Maybe you can correct me on that, all the way through your youth years. Is that correct?
Yeah, Christian, you're right the first time. Yeah, I never made it past the district level. I would make the district team, but then I'd always be cut and released, beyond that point. So it was unfortunate, but it's a perfect example that there are a variety of ways, to be successful. And one of the things that I always like to say is what one coach thinks is fantastic and what he needs and what is great is not what another coach, thinks. And it's very important that young kids and parents understand that, that you will have different pathways, different ways of getting to that end goal where you want to be. You cannot depend on one coach, even if it's the coach of your team that you're on. Sometimes it's necessary to move on if they don't feel that you're right for them. In my situation, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, the coach that always cut me, because he was like the district head and he would always cut me at the district level, was always like a coach that I was competing against on my club team. So it's one of these things. It's like, what, did that have something to do with it? He ended up being a coach that later on was an assistant coach at the university at UCLA, where he would come and help out. So there's all these different avenues and different ways to get there, and people's opinions change. I guess the best way to think of it is, imagine trying to say that every fan thinks that that one player is the best player. It's impossible. So it's the same thing with coaches. They're just people.
Just so everybody understands, you go from in the primary selection platform in the country at the time, ODP, you basically get to step one and never get beyond that. And then you go on later. Now you're sitting here with, between 15 different ventures that you're in, but you look back and you're the most capped player for the men's national team in history. And you played in multiple different countries and continents. I mean, the only story that I can think of that, is that sort of exaggerated example is the old Michael Jordan getting cut in high school, and then moving on to be Michael Jordan. And so when you see that, how do you get through that? Because that can't have been easy, especially when it's happening over and over and over. So how do you go from being the kid that didn't make it and was getting the negative reinforcement, at least from that perspective, to just keep going and being successful regardless of what that was telling you?
When you're talking about the pathways, of getting there, or just the route of getting there, everyone will say there's more than one way, but the really important part is the people that you lean on. You have to have that inner strength, but very few people just, magically have the inner strength. It's kind of like what you're taught when you have your parents and your friends. It's that support group that's around you, all those different people that are willing to help you. For me, I'd have to say it was my mom, but my parents both grew up in that segregated South, right? So they grew up in a situation where you had to be strong-willed. They passed on that attitude towards me and everything that I wanted to do, and how I looked at problems and barriers that were put in my way. If I was cut with the team, my mom wouldn't say, oh yeah, go out. No, she was all about you know what? Don't worry about them. That's not your concern. You can't control them. Worry about what you can control. Do better and beat your best. That was the one thing that she always used to tell me. Beat your best. So that always was in my mind, that the best that I had done, I always tried to strive a little bit more. So for me, it's the support group that you have at your family at home, that they're willing to support you. It's your support group with your friends that are willing to stand by your side and basically lift you up at those times where you're feeling down. And your good friends know when you're down, and they know what to say and they know what to tell you to kind of get you moving in the right direction. And you'll find, over the years, those are the ones that can really support you. It's also the coaches, that are around too, because as we know, as you move up in this game, you're going to have a variety of different coaches, and you're going to have a variety of coaches at the same time that could be telling you different things. And as an individual and a young athlete, young player, it's important that you go to the coach that is supportive of you at the time. And trust me, they'll switch back and forth, but you got to go to the one that's supportive of you at the time, because you're still growing and learning. So you need that support. Yes, you take the comments that are quote unquote negative and instructive to heart, but get that support that's also lifting you up. Because if you're getting negative all the time, you're getting cut from teams, things just aren't working your way. That's difficult and trying over, remember, this can last for a year, 2 years, 3 years. So you need to have the support group around you, friends, family, coaches. Those are the ones that can really help you out.
I'd imagine there were a bunch of different inflection points, in your career where a new opportunity presented itself, or you saw the opportunity for yourself to become a great player. And certainly you got to UCLA, which is no mean feat for anybody. And maybe that was one. But do you remember the first point or one of the big points where you maybe felt like, hey, I can be a pretty special player? I can play at a pretty high level. Do you remember a moment when that hit you, or a conversation or anything that made you think that regardless of what's happened in this other space of my soccer career, I think I can play at a high level?
Look, you always have some belief in yourself, and it's those setbacks or barriers that knock you down, right? So I had little steps on the way. There are little moments, talking to different coaches and things like that. They're telling you you're good, and no one thought, and various coaches didn't think that I was. I think it was at where I thought that I could play at a really high level. And at that time, remember, we're talking like college and all that stuff, was when I did get to UCLA, because I was a walk-on, when I went to UCLA. I wasn't going to get a scholarship. And what people don't know about that class that I was in, it was considered the best recruiting class in the country. So me being a walk-on at that time, there was no expectation of me doing anything.
Who else was in that class?
The Aaron Moose, the Tim Gallegos. There are a few others, but it's not a lot of names, that you would recognize now. The Sam Georges, the Mike Lappers, those were some of the players. That's four, and I think there's two more.
Chris Henderson, Joe Max Moore,
No, they're younger. They're younger. They're younger than me.
Okay.
Those guys, but my class had, those names in it with a couple of others. But that's really the point of it all, is that out of that whole class, I was the one that kept going, and made it to another level. So for me, I look at that. The moment that was special for me is I think it was one of those first training sessions where all those players were there that had won a championship just a few years before, the most heavily recruited class, and myself. And there's a training session where we were playing like a small-sided game, and there was like these scrimmages, and you had to like hold the ball, and I kept going and going and kept fighting and fighting the whole time. And I wasn't playing the best, but I was working hard at it. And then after the fact, when we're all stretching and stuff, some of the older players are like, dude, you gotta like settle down. Why are you working so hard? Like that. And I was like, this is just the normal way I play. This is how I do it, And I think it kind of shocked them, and it shocked me to the effect of going that my normal play was impressing everybody there, and that was something that I was like, what, maybe I have a chance, of making this team, of taking myself to a higher level.
I mean, if you look at that, again, it's sort of a dream story of youth to walk on at UCLA to college and pro. And now you're broadcasting professional games all over the place. That pathway that you went through is obviously different now. There wasn't MLS in the same degree, certainly not pre-1994 anyway, but the youth environment was very, very different. Where do you see college now in that development process for professional players? Do you think we'll still continue to see pros coming out of college in some degree? How do you look at it now? Because it certainly was the process that you went through. It's obviously different. Where do you see college soccer now?
Yeah, look, it's different. And to be quite honest, it has gone lower on the scale as there's more just academy and just going straight professional. Like we said, there's different routes, to everything. I still think college has its place. I would like to see college make some changes, maybe extend the season, a bit longer, so you can actually, have instead of like that 2.5, 3 month period, you actually have more time, an extended season. You can train a little bit more. These are important. Other sports do it, within the game. I think soccer, if they could do that, I think that would be fantastic, because I think there's benefits to college, that you necessarily don't get, from, just going academy. And I know the pluses that everyone says at academies, you're going professional, you're getting that training right away, you're going hard all the time. But also with college, you get that independence. You're not at home, you are away. You have to deal with life and soccer, at the same time, because I think professional athletes, you realize that it's not always just soccer that you have to deal with. There's a lot of outside influences. And I think college gives you that first kind of touch of that, where you have to be dependent and independent, and that you can have to depend on yourself to get to school on time, get your work done, get to training on time, understanding a variety of different pressures on you, and be able to handle it. So I think college is good. I think the social aspect of college is very important, where you can learn how to interact with people. I think that's very important outside of just soccer people, because if you're in the academy system, you're dealing with soccer people all the time. I don't care what anyone says. 99% of the time, it's soccer people. You're in college, you're dealing with soccer people, you're dealing with people outside of soccer, you're dealing with people with other sports, you're dealing with teachers, you're dealing with administrators, all this stuff. I think it makes you a more well-rounded person, and that's one of the things that we have to remember. I think it's funny that now is the only time that people are starting to say that we should only, not be well-rounded, when it comes to, academy and soccer. You talk about at a young age, even doctors are saying, don't play just one sport, play multiple sports, because repetitive injury, you got to be well-rounded. But then when it comes to the college level, it's like, no, just stick to this. Not everyone's a Tiger Woods. There's always going to be those exceptions that have played the sport from when they're 5, straight through nothing else and become superstars. But there's also ones that have played that sport and nothing else that have not been successful and had to go different routes. So for me, I think all that being said, we realize that there's different paths for everyone. Not everyone matures at the same time and in the same way. You got to give the opportunities and look at some of the colleges. Some of the colleges have already adjusted where they've gotten their players with just those short 3-month seasons of competitiveness to go professional. Look at Maryland. They've done a very good job. You can see that they've been sending consistently over the years players. UCLA has done it to a degree as well, players that are playing at that professional level. If we can make some tweaks and adjustments, I think it's possible, that there's more of a space for college, within as far as the next step to the pro game.
Indiana, North Carolina are also great examples as well. We're here with the great Cobi Jones. We're going to take a quick break, pay some bills, and we'll be back with Cobi Jones right here on Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast.
Nike is a proud sponsor of ECNL Girls. Nothing can stop what we can do together to bring positive change to our communities. You can't stop sport because #you can't stop our voices. Follow Nike on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Soccer.com is proud to partner with the ECNL to support the continued development of soccer in the U.S. at the highest levels. We've been delivering quality soccer equipment and apparel to players, fans, and coaches since 1984. Living and breathing the beautiful game ourselves, our goal at Soccer.com is to inspire you to play better, cheer louder, and have more fun. Visit Soccer.com today to check out our unmatched selection of gear, expert advice, and stories of greatness at every level of the game.
Welcome back to Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Linke, joined by the President and CEO, Christian Lavers, and the great U.S. Soccer Hall of Famer, Cobi Jones. He's a great announcer, was a big-time player. And Cobi, you just talked about your time at college and where college fits. I appreciate you still saying it belongs, because I do a ton of college soccer, as you know. One of the things I do remember, though, early on is when you made the Olympic team. First of all, that was a big-time team with big-time names that continue to do big-time things in the game. You know all the names. There was a coach, by the way, who didn't treat me very well, but he treated you really well, and Lothar Osiander. He was so mean to me, man. He was nasty. And Colin Lindoris, but clearly Lothar loved the way you played. So from Ziggy to Lothar, talk about that transition. And then from Lothar to Bora, talk about that transition. And there's one thing I do want to say is I felt like I had a front row seat. I felt like during the Olympics, you were starting to grow the dreads a little more. Alexi was growing the beard. Like, you guys kind of had a premonition that you were in the middle of something big. And I think it started at Barcelona, knowing that you were working your way to the World Cup. So that's a whole lot of questions in there, Cobi. Hopefully you can address them.
Yeah, you're going to have to remind me of some of the questions, but I'm going to put you on the spot, Dean, with some of your things. First off, you said something at the beginning, not 11 years in Galaxy, 12 years. Thank you very much. Just so
12 years. All right, my bad. Okay, Wikipedia sucks.
Don't cheat me, Dean.
I just read it right off Wikipedia, Cobi, but I'll change that.
And another thing, Lothar, as you said, Lothar loved me. I think he got that one wrong, Dean, because I think people forget, and here it is again. Lothar cut me twice, before the Olympics. He cut me twice at the same tournament. And here's the thing too. I was a little bit of a Francophile, right? I took French in high school. I loved France, everything about it. I always wanted to go. And there was that Toulon tournament, that I always wanted to go to, and guess which tournament he cut me right before twice, the Toulon tournament, where I was like, really? And it was the last year right before the Olympics, that I finally made it, and I made it to the Toulon tournament and got to play there. Yeah, that whole time, with Lothar Osiander, it wasn't the best relationship. It's one of those things where people look back and go, oh, you must have been great. No, he cut me twice. So obviously I was bitter on the situation. And then we made it to the Olympics. I ended up, starting in the games, which is absolutely fantastic in Barcelona in 1992. Dean, do you remember the mascot there?
Man, I don't remember. I remember, all I remember is Steve Snow, that it was going to snow in Barcelona, and that was a hot mess too. What was the mascot?
The mascot was that dog, that little dog. You remember its name?
Cobi.
That's right. There you go. It's spelled the exact same way too, which was, it was a primitive, it was meant to be. It was spelled C-O-B-I, so.
I do remember that.
Hilarious, right? One of those things where it's like, you know what, there's a little bit of something up above saying it was meant to be. But yeah, I mean, the time in Barcelona was absolutely fantastic playing there with that group of guys. I think we did something special, but as you said, it was a hot mess just as far as, there was a little bit of fighting between the players and the staff, and if we could go to the opening ceremonies or not, all those little things, and little bit of push. We actually got to go. Yay, let us go. Had the dream team slide in right in between our team, which was great. So we had special moments and those memories. So I'm glad we went. That whole Olympics where there wasn't an expectation of us to do well in it, and we played pretty well in those games. And that was kind of like that stepping stone. I didn't expect a whole lot to happen after that. I was expecting to go back to UCLA and finish up my schooling, because everyone had to leave their schooling to train together for that 6-month period leading up to the Olympics. I was planning to go back after that, but I guess I had a good enough showing there that the coach of the national team, Bora Milutinovic, actually
he did love you, right? He did love you.
Yeah, but in that weird way, right? Where he was the loving and doting dad that was going to teach you everything, and that everything you had been taught before was wrong. So I get to nitpick on every little thing you do, So Bora did bring us in. I don't know if I have time to tell the story here, but this is one of the great stories of my career, I think. But I'll do it really quickly. We went to Saudi Arabia, and and as you said, Bora supposedly loved us, all the young guys and everything, and I wasn't playing, and this was it's one against one of the African teams. I
was on that trip too, Cobi, by the way. Yeah, I rode the camels and all that.
I remember this story, but we were at the game, and the first game they didn't do well. They lost, and we had the dinner afterwards, and as players, you talk around the table, and we're the young guys. Remember me and Lapper sitting next together, and I won't say some of the old guys because I won't blast them, but they were asking us, so what'd you think? Da, da, da. And amongst the players, they're like, well, I thought this was wrong. I didn't think we did this, da, 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 all this type of stuff, just amongst the players, right? And so I guess there was some big row that us young guys, first trip, didn't know about. And the coach had called a team meeting, that night. And he starts blasting, I remember Roy Waverly speaking up and Miola speaking up and Desmond Arndt, all these guys. And then one of the players, an older player, goes, what? Because Bora's like, so what's the problem? I hear that there's people have problems with the team, all this stuff. And then one of the older players goes, well, we were talking at dinner, and these guys were saying and pointed to me and Lapper, the young guys on the trip, and our eyes just go like, and Bora just got quiet as the guys started saying a bunch of the stuff that we were talking about. And I was just going, really? You're going to throw us under the bus, And after that, Bora went off on us for a good, Dean, as Bora liked to talk, a good 10 or 15 minutes. Just blasting myself and Mike Lapper, the whole time. And we were basically like, someone told me afterwards, Desmond Armstrong told me afterwards, he's all, yeah, I thought you were done, that you're gone, from the national team, So after this conversation, we all go back, me and Lapper are like, really? This guy threw us on it? What the, And so the next game happened, and it was against the African country. I can't remember the name exactly, but I'm on the bench, sitting there just going, well, this is my last time with the national team. Let's enjoy this, Chris Henderson is out there, he's playing, and he goes up, and goes up for a header and gets hit, and goes down to the ground, right? And he's not getting up. And so the trainer goes out, and I'm still sitting there just kind of kicking back, shoes untied, don't have my shin guards on. And, they're just like, Cobi, warm up. And Bora looks down and goes, what are you doing? That I didn't have my shoes tied, that I didn't have my shin guards on, and starts screaming, so what you do? So he's pissed at me, that I didn't have everything ready to go. And he's like, wow, get ready. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm putting everything on as quick as possible, getting ready and going back and warming up. And then just like, this trip is the biggest nightmare ever. Then Chris is like, fine. So he gets up and they say he's fine. So he goes back and play. And I'm just like, oh, and I'm warming up for like 5 minutes. Then one of the older players, a different one, says, yeah, he's fine. You can come back and sit down now. So I go back and I sit down. 2 minutes later, Chris goes up for another header. Bam, head to head again. He's down. And like, he's out. Bora looks back behind the bench to go, where's Cobi? And I'm sitting down. He looks over and I'm sitting down. And he's like, what you do? This is crazy. And he's like, get up. So I'm just like, this sucks. Okay, I'm done with the national team. So I get subbed in for Henderson. And then I go into the game, and within the game goes on, I end up getting an assist and a goal. A goal and an assist in the game. And I think we ended up winning the game. And then after the fact, I was going on a trip, like a tryout in, I think it was in Germany at Cologne. And I was supposed to fly straight from there to Germany. And as I'm walking to the bus, because everyone's kind of going their separate ways after that, Bora comes up by me and goes, Cobi, my friend, you must tell your coach what you do. Where are you going? What are you doing? Talk to me. Yeah. And I was like, it's amazing what scoring some goals and having a good time with you. You could go, and that's when Desmond told me, he's all, if you hadn't scored the goal and assist, you would have been done. And it's just like, boom, a turn of a dime. That was a pivotal moment in my career. Just switched everything.
That's a great story, man. I'm so glad you shared it. I'm going to turn it back over to Christian, but I do want to go back to one point, because I did feel like in Barcelona, and it sounds like you don't necessarily feel the same way, but I really felt like Alexi knew what he was doing. He was playing the national anthem before the games. He was rocking out, and that beard was getting longer by the day, Cobi. He knew what was coming. And I thought your dreads were getting bigger by the day too. Like you knew that what was coming, but you're telling me, no, you still weren't sure.
No, I was just lazy. I didn't want to cut my hair, It takes a long time. I tell you, where people don't realize, when you have dreads like that and you have to get them retwisted and stuff, that's like a 2 to 3 hour ordeal, So it is a lot of work in that if you're trying to keep it like nice and tight. But for me, it was just like, I just wanted to let it go. I was just having fun. And, to be quite honest, it was, pissing my dad off a little bit. He was like, what do you got on your head? That type of stuff. I was like, well, I'm in college now. I'm an adult. I can do what I want. So I was just letting it go.
All right, there you go. I thought you were seizing the moment, and it just happened for you anyway. All right, I'll turn it back to Christian. Cobi, thanks for going down memory road with me.
Yep.
Hey, man, I could just hear these stories all day long. So I'll just throw another one out. I mean, one of the most iconic games, I think, in national team history was 2002 in Portugal, and that game. And I think you went 45 minutes in that game. Is that right?
Something like that, where I came in as a sub.
The Brian McBride goal in that game, the 3-2, the win in that game. I mean, that was one of those, I think people watching remember where they were in that game. But I was going to ask, do you have any stories from that game, or you got any other moments that you think that were iconic moments that sort of propelled your career or that gave you a different perspective, anything? I mean, because you got a huge personality, man, and hearing these stories is awesome.
There's a lot, right? I mean, for me, the 2002, World Cup story, against Mexico, I think that one's huge, just from what it represented especially within the soccer world. And then how it kind of transcended, into so much more, just because you have the casual fan paying attention to the World Cup. I think that's where we really kind of elevated to another level, because people forget up until that point, Mexico and the U.S. have been battling back and forth. Even though the U.S. have won a lot of the games against Mexico in the late 90s and started flipping the script, it wasn't until 2002 that we met at the highest level, the biggest tournament, where the whole world's watching, right? We always thought that we were good and competitive against Mexico. Even when we would beat Mexico, everyone was saying, oh, it was just a one-off, even though it happened more than once, or it was just kind of just a lucky situation, whatever. But when you meet at the World Cup and you meet your rival within your region, so we met Mexico in our region, there's no more excuses. This is it. You're playing your best. We're playing our best. You put it out there, and who wins? And for us to get through that and come up with the victory was was absolutely amazing. And for myself personally, the different situations when you had Rafa Marquez coming in, with the foot in the side and the headbutt, and him getting red carded and sent off, and us kind of dominating the rest of the game. Though those were pivotal moments for not only me, but for U.S. soccer, because it really showed that, wait a second, there is a flip. U.S. was on top, Mexico was underneath now. And we, due to that, Mexico changed everything on how that they were developing their players. That's when you started seeing a more physical, type of an aggressive type of player. That's how you had the Chicharitos and the Giovanni Dos Santos start coming out, where they changed the game, understanding that you needed a lot more than just be skilled and not use the physical side of the game as well. So that was another, I guess, highlight for me, everything that was going on, during that World Cup.
So maybe I'll ask a question on that, because you talk about Mexico changing their sort of developmental philosophy or framework based on a failure at the highest level. In our country, and I'm sure you've seen this with the federation over the years, there always seems to be a sort of philosophy du jour, who we're learning from, who we're following, who we're going to be the next of, who we're, whether it's this European country or that European country. And I think if we had to speak in 20,000 feet, people would look at the teams you played on and say they were, that was a team that wasn't looking to the rest of the world for inspiration or for philosophy. That was American players being American players and being the best they could be and having tremendous success. So how do you balance that when you look at it now? I mean, you just referenced Mexico changing and then developing a great new generation of players. And then you have the US, who maybe was very much internally focused, and then now over the last 10, 15 years has been looking everywhere else. How do you think we develop the best players in this country?
I think you look internally, because one thing that I don't buy into this, okay, we're going the Dutch system, we're going the French system, it's like, okay, whoever wins the World Cup, we're just going to go that way. No, I mean, that's the problem. I think that's happened, is that you continuously change and you don't get anything, that's a solid base. And that's what really needs to happen. So that's why I think you look internally. And when I talk about, when I mentioned Mexico changing the way they do things, it wasn't their style. It was just adding ingredients as far as changing that. They weren't just going to look at, okay, just the technical player. Well, we want the technical player that also has the physical side to it. That's what they did that really kind of took them up a notch and to another level, where they started dominating once again. That's something that I think the U.S. could do. It's like, okay, don't go, okay, from we're going to play this Latin style to we're going to play this Dutch style to this French style, because you're shifting all the time. And then it just mixes, and you don't have your own identity. That's what I think the U.S. has to understand. Say, okay, what do we want to do? How are we going to play? Are we going to be a traditional and style is going to be very defensive, oriented and go on the counterattack? Or are we going to be a very attacking team and open up the play? Or are we going to be very skilled and like a slow buildup? Look, I think it's got to be a mix, because I think this is just the U.S. in itself. It's such a big country that there's always these different styles. But whatever comes down from U.S. soccer and from the playing side of things, let's get the style of what we want to play and try to have that over the next decades. And then you fit the players into the system. You don't just keep shifting the system around, because that's a problem. And sometimes you'll have fantastic players that do not fit in the national team system, and you don't bring them in. I think we're starting to get to that level where we can start doing that. I mean, look at England. They've had a style, but they've had some top players, top goal scorers that just never played for the national team, or maybe showed up a few times, but they didn't fit the system. I think we're at a development stage now where we have, such a big country that you have different styles, yes, all over, but let's get the one style for the national team, have it go from the top down, as far as this is how we want to play at the senior team. Everybody underneath should be playing this style. Now, that does not mean that other styles are wrong that clubs are playing. It does not mean that clubs should necessarily adjust and start playing exactly like that. It's just how the national team is going to play. You can have a very fantastic career playing a different style of play and never get into the national team, but still be a superstar. And that's what I think people have to realize.
We're here with Cobi Jones on Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. Christian, some guys get it all, right? We already knew he was a good-looking dude. We already knew he was a heck of a player. Now we're realizing how smart he is as well. More with Cobi Jones after this break.
From athletes just starting to turn heads to some of the best athletes to ever play their games, Gatorade shows that they are the proven fuel of the best. For the athletes who give everything, nothing beats Gatorade, the studied, tested, and proven fuel of the ECNL. ECNL Boys is partnering with Puma for the second year, driving sport forward with the leading products and the next generation of pros who wear them. Puma has proven themselves as the fastest sports brand in the world, the fastest innovation, the fastest players, and the fastest products in the game. They're the perfect partner to complement the speed and talent of our teams. In keeping with their mantra of forever faster, Puma introduces the world's fastest boot, the Ultra. The only boot engineered for speed, the Ultra combines a woven upper with a lightweight outsole for direct forward motion, speed, and acceleration. It's the best in the game, designed for the best players in the game.
Welcome back to Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. So pleased to be joined by the superstar that is Cobi Jones, Dean Linke, and Christian Lavers with Cobi. And Christian, we'll let you dive right back in for our final segment here with Cobi.
Well, you can sense it just talking to you. You got like resilience coming out of like everything, man. Your personality, even telling the stories of difficult moments, you're laughing about it. And I get the sense that probably sustained you through a lot of your career. Where's that come from?
I had 3 older brothers, so you have to laugh about a lot because you're on the butt of a lot of jokes, at that time. So, one of the things that people always said about me is like, it always seemed like I was enjoyed the game because I was always laughing and smiling on the field. And I was, even when I was, on corner kicks and stops, I'd be laughing and joking and having a good time because it's a game. People got to remember that it's a game. We're playing a game. And for me, it was a joy to be able to play a game for close to what, 30 something percent of my life, just to be able to be out there, kick the ball around, get paid to do it, travel the world, see different things, have experiences that nobody will be able to take away from me and very few people will be able to do. And that's why, I had a joy with it and I still do. It's something special to be involved in this sport. And as an athlete, I always tell the guys that are playing, play as long as you can and enjoy it as much as you can. Because when it ends, you will appreciate those times and you will miss those times, but more so than anything else, you'll miss that locker room. That's the most thing. You'll miss the training sessions. That's what I miss the most. The stadiums and the fans, yes, fantastic. But I miss, joking around with the guys, in the locker room day in and day out, talking smack, and all those different things. Those are the things that are special that when you're older, you don't get, and it's, it's hard to deal with, when it's over, but you do have to, deal with it. So enjoy that time and spending time with your bros or your sisters, whichever way you want to look at it.
So, I mean, that advice, it means one thing when it comes from the guy playing in a pub league saying, hey, it's a game, enjoy it and have fun. It's another thing when it's a guy with your pedigree that, still comes down to saying that, man, I got to play a game, I got to enjoy it. But you look at youth soccer now and you got players and parents that are so caught up in where do I got to be? What club do I got to be with? What league do I got to be in? All this stuff that seems to detract from that. And you're a guy who I'm going to guess you just went about your business going through youth soccer, enjoying it, but, working your butt off and competing. What advice do you have to young players now as they're looking forward and they have ambition and they have goals? So they're not just out there, kicking a ball. They want to be great. What's your advice to them on the things they can control in their path?
Well, I would say one thing, and I'm always taking advice as well, right? And I've learned recently, and I realized I had done it when I was, in the middle of my career or even the start of my career. It was be present or be involved, at the moment. That's very important. And that's one of the things that allowed me to do so many different things. So people will say, oh, you're all over the place. You're doing different things. I do a lot of different things, but when I'm doing that, I try to be involved in that moment and, where I am. So when I was on the soccer field, that was like one of those great places I could be, that I could put everything else behind me. I wasn't thinking about, the schoolwork or anything else. It was that sense of relief. I was thinking about relationships or anything. It was out and enjoying the game side of things. Even as I went pro, yes, you try to get a great contract and you try to do all this stuff, but once that's done, it's a game and you're on the field and you enjoy the game and learn all the details. And I enjoyed, learning the little nuances of the game, of how to, deal with, the one-on-one battles, the 2v2 battles, the 11v11 battles. There's all these little nuances within it. And I would say be present where you're at, so you can learn about the game when you're at, and then be present in those relationships that you have, with the different and the variety of peoples, because they will be that support system and that support group that I talked about, that you will need, trust me, everybody needs it, that you will need, in the future. So that's probably one of the best pieces of advice, I could give.
Great advice there, Cobi. What about as we try to continue to fight racism and be about equality and love, where do you stand on the importance of this, divisive racial world that we live in, and making good strides? And then even more importantly, seeing more people of color in coaching jobs and administration jobs and presidential jobs, that type of situation within the game?
A lot of questions again, Dina, right? Look, my platform was all about, having a more diverse and equitable, situation within U.S. soccer, so I'm behind that 100%, and I think we've got to remember U.S. soccer isn't just, in Chicago, just that organization. It's all the constituents that are involved with it. And that's, I think that needs to go, from the top to the bottom to top, every way, where we can try to spread out, go into those underserved communities, go into the rural communities, the inner city communities, and try to reach out and bring more people into the game and find ways, to overcome those barriers to entry and those blocks that are there, to allow kids to be more involved, that can allow coaches to get more involved. It's all important, because for me, the diversity allows more opportunity, and gives more creative ways of approaching all the problems that we have. If you have, people that come from the same background or the same think, that everyone's gonna look at the problem the same way. If you have different backgrounds, people thinking a little bit differently, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I didn't think of that before. Maybe that could work. So I think it's very important that we look at not just racial diversity, that we look at a variety of diverse issues. We're talking about bringing, more women into the game, more people of color into the game. These are all things that will help, not just U.S. soccer, but soccer in general, going forward. I've always been a big believer that soccer, especially when you get to the highest levels, is a fantastic way of breaking down racism. Why? Because when you are playing this sport and you are traveling, around your county and traveling around your country and traveling around the world, you see people of different races, cultures, creeds, religions, everything playing the game, and realizing that when it really comes down to it, everyone has the same issues. Everyone wants the same things, and it's about, just helping each other out, moving forward. So that's why I love my kids, playing, any sport, to be honest. But when they were playing soccer, and the hope there is that they have that opportunity to travel and do all the different things and everything that the sport has to give.
Man, I think that's an exceptional way to wrap this. Man, I really appreciate you being here and sharing so much. Really hope to, if you can squeeze in more time to be involved in soccer activities beyond the 10 things you're doing right now, we'd love to have you involved with more stuff we're doing in education and other programming. But really appreciate you and what you've done, not only as a player for this country, but now moving forward and giving back in so many other different ways. And really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me. And, just let me know. I can always try to find some time.
Cobi Jones, great to have you on Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. Good to see you, my man. Really appreciate it.
Good seeing you both. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Cobi Jones. Also want to thank all the great people at ECNL, Andrea Wheeler and Jacob and Diana, and who you are, as well as Mary and Erica from our outstanding PR firm. I want to thank Colin Thrash, our producer. For each and every one of them and all of you, this is Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. I'm Dean Linke, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast. For more information on the ECNL, visit us at www.theecnl.com. And if you have a suggestion for the show or a great idea for a guest, please email us at info@theecnl.com. Breaking the Line, the ECNL Podcast is an ECNL production. ECNL, more than a league.